Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ontario Cryptids. I hope you all had a great week, but before we get started with the stories today, I want to inform you of the Black Friday sale event. That is right, next week, November 29th, get ready for the biggest sale of the year at the Ontario Cryptids store. Get up to 30% off on t-shirts, hoodies, cups, and more. Exclusive designs featuring your favorite cryptids. Rock the ultimate look for this season with our high-quality, unique apparel. Perfect for every cryptid enthusiast or gift givers. Mark your calendars, November 29th. Shop online by clicking on the Store tab. Don't miss out on this one-day sale event. Today I have a few exciting stories to share with you all, so why don't we get right into it? And by the way, if you have an encounter story that you would like to share, then please forward your stories to OntarioCryptids@gmail.com. I would be honored to share your story with like-minded people. Now sit back and relax as we begin with today's episode. This first one was sent in by a friend of mine. We're headed to Haliburton County, Ontario, and these events occurred between the year 2000 and present. To start this off, I need to disclose that I have not seen anything, just had unexplainable events occur. I would like to add that I am very content not seeing anything I cannot cope with either. My understanding of what people have been citing worldwide might differ from others, but it is what makes the most sense to me. My beliefs. I subscribe to the Nephilim doctrine and not an undiscovered mammal, and will not try to convince anyone to change their beliefs to follow mine. Others can believe what they wish. Both experiences happened in one weekend during the early stages of the pandemic lockdown. We broke the rules and left our home for a weekend trip to our hunting property. The property is 120 acres with neighboring properties being of the same size. Our property's back onto Crown land of approximately 60,000 acres. I say this so that you can get the feeling of the remoteness. Saturday morning, we were cleaning and organizing the cabin with the idea of changing some shelving in the back corner of the cabin. The shelves were built from 2x4 lumber and were nailed to the walls. I spent the morning ripping it all out cleaning so that I could reuse the materials. No going to the lumber yard during lockdown, especially not in this little town. I was outside with my family hammering nails out of the lumber when we all noticed a peculiar sounding something out in the back hills to the west of the cabin. We call that area Mount Crumpet. Every time I stopped hammering to get a better listen to whatever it was, it would hush. I had my head turned towards Mount Crumpet while hitting the lumber trying to hear it and make out what it was, and then would stop, and it would stop. We all stood there bewildered to what was happening, and we were shocked that whatever it was messing with me. It knew when to be silent. Very strange. So, I did notice that the sound during the hammering was traveling down Mount Crumpet towards the east, and it would have to cross the logging road. I made the decision to go up the logging road behind the cabin to the east. From the top of the hill behind the cabin, I can see a fair distance down the logging road and might catch whatever it was crossing its way to the swamp. The family followed, and all I had in my hand was a hammer, LOL. We saw nothing. It just made one more noise when it was down in the swamp. The noise. Hard to explain, as it only made the sound during the hammering. It was a mixture of children laughter, chattering, turkey gobbling, and coyote yips. That's the best I could describe it. Sunday noonish, my older daughter and I were outside chattering while my wife was having a nap, and our younger daughter was inside on electronics or crafting. During our chat, I wanted to mention my belief in what may have transpired the day before. My daughter was in a Christian university, and has a very good biblical knowledge. I mentioned that if she were ever to encounter something in the forest that she cannot explain, that it might be something biblical. I referenced Genesis, Nephilim, men of old, men of renown. Then all of a sudden there was a crisp, loud crack of a large branch up on Mount Crumpet. The sound I would compare to a .22 caliber shot, not super loud, but would be hard to replicate with just breaking a branch. I do not think I can smack a tree with a baseball bat hard enough to make that sound from that distance, approximately 600 feet away. As soon as I heard it, I turned towards the sound, and then another loud crack. I listened intently, and a third loud crack. No wind, no people around, nothing, and that was it. The only thing that keeps recurring in my mind is the thing that we heard the day before was up there and was acknowledging somehow what I just told my daughter. Funny thing, the Trinity, 3 knocks. And if it was, how on earth could it hear me from that far away? Some may think that I'm crazy. Some may think that I heard an animal or a person or a tree, LOL. But what I heard was not right. It was just all too weird. I have been in and around the woods all my life, and I have never experienced anything like this, and not since then. Well, that's my Sasquatch story. Oh, I just thought of another thing that happened at the cabin, but it did not happen to me, but to my brother-in-law and a few of his kids. Around 2001, I offered a cabin for the weekend to him and a few of his sons. On the Monday, he approached me and asked me if I was at the cabin and was trying to scare them. I said that I was at home all weekend. He told me that when they went to bed, they were woken by something hitting the roof, and then there was a loud bang on the back wall. They jumped out of bed and he grabbed a flashlight and went outside to catch whomever was trying to scare them. They saw nothing. That is it for now. This took place around 1984. We're going to Bayfield County, Wisconsin. This is within a couple of 100 feet from where it happened. I grew up very close to this location and spent a lot of time in these woods. I was bow deer hunting, fall of like 1984 or close to it. I was sitting 12 feet up in a pine tree in a deer stand. It was afternoon, warm, sunny. I started hearing this guttural scream like a roar from quite a long distance away, but it kept yelling. The same low, deep roar-like yell. It did it every 15 seconds or so as it kept getting closer. It got too close. I decided it was coming for me. I was like 16 at the time and only had a bow. I jumped. I jumped out of the tree and ran for my life. I never heard it yell again. I never even went back for my tree stand. I can't really tell you why. I never thought it was a squatch. I never heard a sound like that, and I had no idea until like 25 years later, listening to some Bigfoot show, and I heard the same yell. It made me realize it was a squatch. It had to be, and I mean that. I regret running. I so wish I had seen it. But also, I don't know, it seemed really pissed. 40 years later, it still makes me tear up a little when I tell it. Most of my friends just laugh at it. This one takes place in the 2000s to present time. We're headed to Houston County in Texas, and the nearest town is Grapeland. Okay, full story. This will be a little long and chronologically set up. I'll do my best to be as detailed and precise as I can. Firstly, this is in Texas outside of Grapeland. About 20 years ago, my grandfather had a feeder set up. It was filled with 300 to 400 pounds of corn. The feeder had very wide legs so that big hogs couldn't knock it over. It was on flat ground with zero tilt. 2 grown men could not knock that feeder over. And there is no way any animal in the woods could. But somehow it ended up knocked over. Sometime after that event, a turd as big around as my wrist, so about 2.5 to 3 inches, was found. I did not see this in person, but I had all but forgotten about it. In about 2017, I was hunting, opening weekend, and that Sunday I was walking to my stand and saw a 4-inch cedar tree snapped off at about 6 feet. Not just snapped, but twisted. I came in the day before, and I can say for a fact it was not like that because I noted the rub marks from hogs on the side of it. I ignored it. Next, 2024 bow season. I'm in full camo, face, neck, pants, long sleeves, all of it. Sitting against a big pine tree with a crossbow. I got this gut-wrenching feeling, and all of my hair stood up. I started scanning and saw movement. I darted my head towards it, and I saw a head and shoulders slip behind a tree about 80 yards away. I thought it was off, and the more I looked, I realized there was no hill behind it, and whatever it was about 8 feet up that tree. I looked for a long time, and I didn't find it. I continued to hunt and took a shot at a deer, but he ducked the arrow. I didn't know it at the time, so I looked for blood till dark and made my way back. With an empty crossbow and no bolt, I felt very naked. I had a bad feeling all the way back, but chalked it up to being paranoid. I have hunted those woods all my life. I know everything in these woods, or so I thought. Nothing else eventful happened that trip. I went up again open rifle weekend and smoked 2 spikes. Didn't have anything weird happen till that night. I heard a weird whoop. Not an owl, not any bird. Sounded like an owl, but it kept hooting too fast and frequently for an owl. Later that night, I heard something large and on 2 legs walk all the way around the building. All the windows are blocked up and it's dark, so I can't see. I also noted a warbling talking sound. Very low, not any normal language. It sounded almost like Cajun French, but more broken up, and warbly is the only word. The next morning I packed up and left with no eventful things. I got up the next week to make sure that no poachers are messing about on our property and think about where to plant persimmons trees. This is when I found my 5-gallon bucket feeder that was in the holy tree, tied to a 2.5 3-inch branch. The branch was bent over, mangled, and snapped off. The lid to the feeder was nowhere to be found within 100 yards. The bucket has a hole in the bottom for corn, so it didn't fill with water and break it. I recovered the feeder and figured I would buy a new lid. The rest of the trip was uneventful. 2 weeks later, I go back to sight in some guns, relax, and test some hand loads. I got there, shot 3 mags of 2 9mm and 2 slugs. At this point, I was suspicious enough to carry a shotgun with slugs, and I wanted to make sure that it shot to point of aim. Now my mindset was, I would shoot a bunch, scare anything off, and hunt squirrels in the afternoon. While on my way to shoot some squirrels, I had that feeling again. Every time I started walking, I would hear stuff out of sight. Stumps crack, sticks breaking, something rubbing against branches. When I stopped, it stopped. That, and during gusts of wind, I would hear it. Always out of sight, but not my imagination. I decided, F squirrels, and kicked the squirrel shots out and made sure I was topped off with slugs. I made my way back to the camp, sticking to trails where I could see at least 40 yards or so. Nothing could sneak up on me. I made it within eyesight of the building and heard what sounded like a 4-inch log snapping, like something stepped on it. It was directly behind me, about 30 yards through some brush. I froze for a second and listened. Finally getting fed up and finally hearing something, I can't blame it on squirrels, I rotated around, pointed my shotgun, yelling, cussing, and beating my chest. I hoped something would walk out to face me and I could just end it there, but I didn't see or hear anything. I walked the rest of the way with no sound or anything like that. That night was my breaking point. I heard what sounded like someone throwing acorns at the door of the building. The side, not falling from a tree, it was directly at the side. Then I heard what sounded like a finger tapping the side at about 5 to 6 feet. Then 2 seconds later, I heard it on the other corner. I didn't hear anything walking back and forth, and it went on randomly for an hour or so, but always 2 taps and always about 2 seconds apart. I barely slept and decided to get out of there in the morning. When I woke up, I packed all my stuff with the door closed. Now, this is a metal building with a metal door. I was 100% safe in the building. Nothing was getting in. I unlocked the door and pushed it open with the barrel of my shotgun. I looked to my right, the opposite side that the door opens to, and I saw a gray blur take off into the woods about 100 yards downhill. I look around the door to my left and I didn't see anything. I was worried something would be hidden behind the door because it didn't open all the way. As soon as I was sure nothing was near me, I looked back to the blur and it was gone. About 40 seconds later, I heard an owl. Whoo! This was at 11 a.m. and it sounded too deep. Like a dumbass, I hooted back. I was hoping to hear a normal owl respond so I could relax, but instead, I hear a loud whoo, 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 and what sounded like a 4x4 being swung by the truck against a tree. Then I heard the most blood-curdling, howling scream I've ever heard about a mile away on a different property. I mean, no movie animal or documentary could put in perspective just how deep and loud and vile that sound was. I threw my generator in the car, grabbed my shotgun, locked up the building, and when I was grabbing the last little things, I saw the hair on the ground. I grabbed it, threw it in the car, and left. I'm not sure I'll ever go back. If I do, it'll be with my M14 and a couple of friends. I refuse to be run off my second home. I love that place and I grew up there. I put the hair in the bag that I happen to have in the car. I would love to just leave them be, but they need to leave me be first. I'm not sure where to get the hair tested, and I hope to God I never see another one. I cannot describe to you the feeling of actually being in his house and not being an apex anymore. I want to give advice to people. You don't want to find this thing. You don't want to know it's real. I spent the next 2 days walking around my house with a gun because I was so stressed and felt like something was going to jump out and get me at any moment. I'm not sure a couple of slugs from a semi would stop him, but it's not one. It's at least 2, maybe 3, maybe more. Don't go looking. Ignorance is bliss. The woods have been ruined for me. I will never not be able to freak out being alone in the place I once loved. They are not aggressive, but they are curious. And they are not scared of us. 3 Glock mags and some slugs, sighting stuff in didn't scare them off. They still came poking around. Daytime seems to be safer, but both sightings were at daytime. I think they like the night because they have better cover and are less likely to run into humans. Well, that will wrap things up for this week. I hope you all enjoyed these encounter stories today, and boy, were they all awesome. Thanks for allowing me to share your experience. And by the way, for that hair sample that you have, you may want to contact David Politis and ask him who you should send that to. If anybody has any other ideas where Far Entrepreneur 3781 can send that hair sample, please comment below. Now let's acknowledge the current OC members. I would like to thank Elizabeth, Jim, Diana, and Teresa for their contribution and support as members of the OC community. Your support is truly appreciated. If you wish to learn more about the OC membership program, you can check out the membership video to get a detailed description of all the perks you will receive. Don't miss out on the adventure. Become a member now and join us today. If these encounters reminded you of one that you may have had, then please forward your encounters to OntarioCryptids@gmail.com. I would be honored to share your story with the OC community. Thank you all for listening until the end. I truly appreciate it. Please hit that like button on your way out and smash the subscribe button if you're new to my channel. Oh, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date with all my latest uploads. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you all next week right here on Ontario Cryptids.